Hello, everybody. I'm John. I run Hexitime, and I also work in the NHS, I should say. I'm based in London, and I support exec boards across the London region, building infrastructure to do improvement stuff. And I'm shortly going to start working at King's College Hospitals in August. So you may see me popping up in South London in the near future, but still very much with a big focus on Hexitime. So over the next 55 minutes, I'm going to do an introduction to Hexitime, show you what it is and why we did it and how it works so that you've got that foundation base of knowledge. I'll then explain how we ended up working with your special interest group. And then I'm going to switch you all onto what's called a Miro board. I'll send a link out about halfway through. And we're going to do a little session on Miro to share ideas and expertise. And then I'll explain next steps and what we're going to do with that. And broadly speaking, we're going to try 2 workshops. This is the first one. We're going to do a lot of understanding and evaluation between the workshops, and hopefully mobilize the special interest group to deliver its purpose even better than you are. So I'll explain Hexitime first, and then pause for breath, take a few questions, and try and give some answers, and then we'll move to the next step. But first things first, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you all turning out today. We're going to record the session, so there'll be a recording for people that missed this. And by all means, I'm very relaxed. If you want to take screenshots of what's going on or share information on social media and so on, please do. It'll only help with engagement and bring more people to the special interest group. Okay, so Hexitime. I'll put a link in the chat. By all means, feel free to have a little browse while I narrate, and I'll do some screen sharing as I go. So Hexitime started in 2018. It was a Health Foundation Q Exchange project that me and a doctor, a guy called Hisham Abdallah, pulled together the idea. And it was actually Matthew on the meeting today who introduced me and this doctor. We pulled together a prototype and took it to the Q Exchange competition, the very first one that they ran, and we won it that year. And we took the grant money from that application and turned it into the thriving social enterprise, not-for-profit that Hexitime is today. So what were we trying to do? Well, me and Hisham, when we got together, we're really trying to tackle, I suppose, 4 big problems that we were seeing around collaboration and improvement in healthcare. The first one was that we saw that the people closest to problems were the very people that you wanted to be engaging with and working with and talking to, because they understood problems and had the best ideas to overcome them. But ironically, these people across the health system are typically have low power. So they're in frontline roles. They don't typically have budgets. They don't typically have big teams or teams at all. And they don't have much leverage in the system to be able to use their skills to fix problems. And that's because of the second thing that was frustrating us, and that's how the healthcare system is really hierarchical, really like Victorian and hierarchical. So you have directors, a minority of directors at the top who have power, budgets, leverage, and they use those typically through program management to sort of create change programs and deliver change. And that's missing a phenomenal trick. You probably don't need me to tell you that, because all those people at the front line with skills and talents and expertise are typically an afterthought, or they're invited to speak when they're spoken to. So that was bothering us, and that hierarchy is siloing people into organizations, but also into departments and professions. And we wanted to smash those silos to pieces, really, and then give power to the people to improve services. The third thing was that the labour market in healthcare and most places you look, is pretty unfair. You, again, probably don't need me to tell you that when you look into a labour market, the people that are winning in that game are white men. They dominate these powers of position, of budgets and leverage, and by default, they dominate these positions in terms of change and improvement. And we wanted to create a complementary market that could help to empower people more with protected characteristics, typically around race and sex, to give them power in a complementary market. And then finally, we hear time and time again that people have no time. So we wanted to be really respectful of people's time and make sure that we, where possible, could give it back, pay it forward, and generally respect when people contribute to improvement projects and ideas. So with these four things that were bothering us, we came up with the concept of Hexitime, which really boils down to two things. It's a marketplace. It's a marketplace that just like breaks down hierarchy and boundaries and silos. And it's a time bank. And a time bank is a marketplace where people trade time as a currency. So you trade time as a currency with Hexitime on the basis that 1 hour is a credit. And 1 hour is a credit regardless of whether you are a receptionist or a chief exec, and actually regardless of whether you're even employed. So you could be a patient, a service user, you could work for a private company, be in the charity sector, a social worker, academia. To us, it doesn't matter. You're all viewed 1 hour, 1 credit. And really the lens becomes on your expertise and the ideas you bring to the table. And it was the time banking aspect of Hexitime through the Q Exchange that piqued people's interest, because we later found out that what we'd done is we built the first time bank for professional skills sharing in the world. And it was that sort of headline that's won us 8 innovation awards in the last 2 years, one at a European level, and is allowing us to really sort of grow and get quite exciting. So let me show you a micro example of what a time banking exchange looks like. Then I'll show you the platform, and we'll pause for breath and some Q&A. Just saw your comment, Kristin. Thank you very much. Okay, so an example about time banking. I'm going to show you a real network now. This is a real network that's using Hexitime and has been using Hexitime for about a year or so. They're a community of computer coders, and they use a computer programming language called R. They call themselves the NHS R community. And when they play on Hexitime on our marketplace, we measure everything they do. So we understand who trades expertise and skill with who, when they do it, why they do it, and so on. So if I zoom in and I show you a single example. So here, Chris Bealey is a data scientist, and he's offering mentoring around data science. So he puts this offer into the market. And Wayne, who works in quality improvement, wants some of that mentoring. So Chris gives Wayne the hour, and Wayne gives Chris the credit. So Chris has helped somebody, and for that hour, he's got his hour reimbursed. Chris is now sat there with a credit. And as it happens, he's writing a paper for publication, but he's not an academic. And so he's needing a bit of advice on his literature review. So he finds Suzanne on the market, who is offering support around a literature review. Chris gives Suzanne the credit that he earned from Wayne, and Suzanne gives him the hour of literature review support that he needs. So there's a number of things here. We can see that Chris, when he helps people, gets the help that he needs. He's not just like charitably surrendering time to Wayne. We can also see that Chris Wayne and Suzanne, we don't really know or care which organizations they work in. We don't really even care if they're paid, and we certainly don't care what their pay grade is or any kind of form of hierarchy here. So Suzanne, Chris, and Wayne are very much equals in this with that hour of currency flowing through. And we can see that when we do this at a big sort of network level, we can create like these great big value chains of time currency flowing through. And they often start with something really unexpected. So by 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 Chris here just making an offer that, he doesn't know necessarily if it's useful, or if I show you somebody else, if I show you Barman here. So by Barman just making a brave request, saying that he wants to be involved in this type of project, by putting that credit over to Thomas, we can see that that credit in a strategic level is like flowing through a system. And at the network level, I mean, we can obviously see who's connecting with who, but we can start to see who the big players are, like Chris, for example, that's gluing all these people in the network together. It's also interesting that people come to the market and they reinvent themselves. So Simon here is a good example. As it happens, Simon is actually a consultant orthopedic surgeon. But when he comes onto Hexitime, he's not here doing consultant orthopedic surgery. He has enough of that in his day job. Simon comes to Hexitime because he wants to help people with the software that he creates around modeling length of stay for patients in healthcare settings. And he trades that with people. And we have really weird and wonderful examples of like junior doctors offering their skills around 3D printing, for example. So this isn't necessarily about your day job. Now I'll tell you an interesting story with this network. When we presented this to the chair of this network, you could very quickly see that there were two really important people, Chris and Daniela here, that were gluing that network together. And the chair of the network actually had no idea who Daniela was. And he said, I really need to know who this person is. Zoom in and tell me, who is this Hexitime ninja that is just making everything happen? And when we examined it, we could explain what was going on. So what happened with Daniela was she was unemployed and a wannabe academic. But so she wasn't really involved in anything. And she started with a very simple offer. She said that she would help people with their LinkedIn profiles to make them more employable. And by putting that offer out, what immediately happened was that to our delight, lots of people from minority ethnic backgrounds came out the woodwork and started snapping up that offer to support their career development. And when she did this, she also, you can see here, helped me translate Hexitime into Spanish because she's bilingual. So she earned loads of credit. And then with all her credit, what she did was spend it on these things here. So she was unemployed, as I say, at the time, and she started using her credit to get lots of like job shadowing opportunities. Some of them really big, like Danielle here is the chair of an NHS hospital, and she got an exec shadowing opportunity with the chair. She also started to get coaching and advice on academic writing. And as a direct result of this, not only did the network chair realize that Daniela was one of the most powerful people in that network, even though she didn't have an official role. But we also learned that Daniela used, by helping people and being generous, she actually used these opportunities to successfully interview for a job. And she's now the chief executive of a primary care organisation in East London as a direct result of these opportunities. And she's now a PhD student as a direct result of using this academic writing offer to support with her submission. So she's now a chief exec and a PhD student as a direct result of starting with something very small, which was just helping people with a skill that she was quite good at. Finally, what we can see on these networks on Hexitime is you can see a lot of red and a lot of blue. Broadly speaking, what red shows is it shows where an exchange is happening with people in your network connecting with people outside of your network. So that might be somebody in your SIG helping somebody in a SIG next door and exchanging those skills. And the blue is where people in your SIG or your network are connecting amongst themselves. So that also starts to give you quite a lot of intelligence as a network as to like where capacity gaps are, where people are having to look elsewhere to get the support they need. So that's what time banking is and how it works and how it can be quite powerful. Because the other aspect here is you don't even need an individual profile. You could be an organization or a department. So you could have like your A&E department here, and you could be trading credit between a person and an A&E department or a GP practice, or as the SIG profile for this network. And you can do all sorts of really weird and wonderful stuff with that, and it becomes a form of economics in itself. So just aware of, I've spoken for 15 minutes. I'm just going to stop, see if there's any questions or any heckling or feedback, and then I'll show you what Hexitime real life looks like, and then we'll do some specialist facilitation around your SIG. So I'll go quiet for a minute.
Thanks, John. That was really helpful and really inspiring case studies. Before we move on, does anyone have anything that they would like to ask John?
Yes, can I ask a question? At the risk of sounding very silly, but hey, I can do that. So, John, I'm here because I'm looking and working with a group who are setting up a community of practice on the Hexitime platform. So I'm just trying to get my head clear around the terminology that you're using. So the network you've just shown us, is that the same as, very similar to a community of practice? Could those two names be interchanged?
I'm not sure they can be interchanged. So Hexitime is a big global market of people exchanging skills and expertise. And then where the magic really happens is people like Hilda with this special interest group, and people like yourself with the community of practice you're working on in Oxford, in the Oxfordshire region. What you do is you come to this market with purpose. And then what we do is create what are effectively like mini markets within Hexitime. And that example I showed you with the computer coders, they're doing exactly the same thing. So that might be a community of practice. It might be you just want to help people to network and build communities. Or in that other example, they want to really drill down into their computer code to use computer code to improve healthcare. And the beauty here is that all these things are happening simultaneously. And when you look at them, they're happening in a language that speaks to you. So communities of practice or network weaving. And then behind that, there's a big market that's allowing these networks of purpose to cross-pollinate and communicate. So say, for example, you're getting really busy with your community of practice in Oxford, but then there's somebody in this special interest group with skill and expertise that can help you. They can play in both markets freely. And it's a big part of those like 4 problems we were trying to solve at the beginning. We've deliberately designed a market without silos, but it allows you to bring purpose and special interest to what you do and really drill down on things. So typically what you might see like in other areas is like people create like password protected websites for different things and they don't talk, or you have to buy a particular license to like run something for your organization. We've like rubbished all of that notion. So you could be in 15 of these groups if you wanted to, and play in all of them. And I do recognize you, Carol. I saw you. I remember you the other day.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Carol. There's also a question in the chat box, John. How do we gain credit as a group if we put the department or the SIG in Hexitime? And also, Mark, great to see you here. Mark is also saying it makes a lot of sense because a lot of the time we put out, but we don't necessarily get something back. So Hexitime makes sense. But if you could maybe share how do we gain a credit as a group if we put the department or SIG on Hexitime, and everyone will be getting credits for coming today.
I'll do that in my next demo. That's included. So
Brilliant.
just give me 5 minutes for that. That'll be included.
Mandy?
Yeah, just a really quick one. I'm just then thinking, which I think the answer is yes, but it's just so that it's crystal clear in my mind. So we set this up, and people who are in the special interest group, i.e. the Network Q special interest group, will be part of this. But there's also, I'm then thinking, so say for example, there could be Q members in England, Scotland, Wales, or not Q members who might then be interested in this. They can also come into this as well.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Because I'm then just thinking, the reason I'm asking is I'm kind of thinking then, the question that Carol put forward around a community of practice. Sometimes a community of practice can be bound by that interest, but I'm getting the feeling that this is a bit more creative from the point of view of accessibility.
Yeah. So the only sort of like boundary we put around things is purpose, generally speaking. This will become apparent as I show you the platform. So yeah, what you don't want is your purpose being diluted as you're working with a team or a group. But if there's people from random corners of the world and random professions and sectors that are happy to contribute to your purpose, what we're saying is open the door. We're actually saying there's no door. We're saying let them get involved.
I think
this will be a bit more apparent as I demo.
I think that's really helpful, John. I'm thinking there's some other questions in the chat, and I'm aware time's going on and there's other things you want to cover. So I'm wondering if we go back on with the presentation, and then if there isn't anything, if those points aren't covered, we can come back to them. Is that okay, folks? Thumbs up. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Yeah, let's do that. And Rebecca, you've raised a really interesting and incorrect assumption, which is, and we'll touch on it. So you're saying that people might, who are new, tend to request more. It's actually not true. We're finding that requesting help requires an element of bravery. But when people do it, it's super powerful. Our data actually shows it's 7 times more powerful. And we'll touch on it. It's a really interesting point. And it's music to my ears, because if we can encourage people to ask for help more, we find that it creates 7 times more connections than when people offer help. So bear that in mind when we get to the exercise in a bit, because if you can ask for help, our data shows you're actually having more impact in the community than when you offer it, which took me a while to believe until I saw the data. Okay, so let's have a look at Hexitime. So here's the website. I'll put the link in the chat. You can just Google it, you'll find it. It's a web app, so it'll work on your phone anywhere. And you can also browse the market without creating a profile. If you want to do anything, you'll have to create a profile. To create a profile, you just go into the top right. So if I log out, you'll just see when you're a newbie, there's a thing for register. If I click on that, all I need to register is the only mandatory field is an email address. So just put your email address in, whichever one you want. It doesn't have to be work. Stick a password. You'll get an email notification. Verify that, and then you're in. And then you can start to participate. So what you'll see as we scroll down are an open market of people asking for help and people offering help. And it's a weird and wonderful mix, but what's generally uniting people is they're over 18, they're generous with their time, and they do not take payment for their time, and they're here to improve health and care services. And that's true of every offer and request on the platform. So if you want to post one of these yourself, you're completely in the driving seat. You just click on here, offer or request help. and you choose what you want to do and you follow through the form. You hit submit and your activity will go live. And if we've got time, we'll put a few of these on at the end. Now, if you see something that you like, so let's say you've given a really generous hour of your time to participate in this workshop today. As it happens, Hilda has put a request on here for people to contribute for the SIG. So everybody on the call today qualifies. Let's cash in your hour. So I click on this activity. I might want to check out who Hilda is that's giving out these credits. So I can click on Hilda and it will take me to her profile. You'll notice here that because I'm not signed in, I can't click on anything. But if I sign in, the button goes green and I can then take it up. So you'll notice a few things here. There's a bit of explanation saying if you've participated, click here, you'll get the credit. There's various search tags on this linked to your community. We'll get on that in a second. So I want my hour on my profile. I click on offer to help. I select the amount of hours that I did. So today I've done 1 hour. I give Hilda a bit of an explanation as to why I'm claiming. I was at the SIG meeting today. I then hit submit. Now, when I hit submit, that's going to go into Hilda's inbox. So behind Hexitime is a confidential messaging system. It'll land in her inbox. She'll get a notification that I'm claiming a credit, and then it'll follow through a 3-step process. That message that we sent will appear here. She'll then verify that, and she'll then give you your credits. And it will save it on the system so that next time you contribute to the SIG, all Hilda has to do is just repeat the exchange. And when that is processed, on my profile, so I'm going to my profile here, my credits will increase by that amount. And behind this, what you can see are there's lots of people on Hexitime with a wide range of backgrounds, skills, and expertise. And when you come to Hexitime, like you reinvent yourself for whatever you want. So you can call yourself an analyst if you want, or you could call yourself what Deep has done here. She matrices numerous improvement projects. You can call yourself what you want and participate how you want to do. But what you'll see here is that people have credits next to them, and they're trading those credits on these big reciprocal networks like this. So that's how you claim for an activity. So we'll do a bit of an exercise in a minute just to explore what's possible. But let's say I want to add something to this market. So I can go in here and now add a request. So I need help. So let's say I could really do with a data analyst for a project. And then I can put some explanation in. For 2 hours, I'm in London. We can do this virtually, or what have you. I add a picture. And then most things on Hexitime give you a 3-step form. So let's say I want I need this quickly. If I put an expiry date, let's say I need this in the next 2 weeks. When it expires, it will drop off the platform so that I don't get pestered when I don't want to. I can do things like put my location in, logistical things. So like I can say there's accessible parking if you need it. I can even put my availability. So let's say I'm only available to do this on Monday mornings. And then finally, the final bit is all about, just close that, is all about search tags. So I can tag this in ways that people can find it on the big market. So these are all search tags, right? So I might want to do that by region. I might want to say, okay, well, this is only for people in London or what have you. But the most important tag I want to show you today is the network one, because look what I've done. Under network, as we scroll down, I've added your SIG. So if we add your SIG to any activity that you post, people will be able to locate it based on searching for your SIG stuff on a big global market. So I've added that to the activity. And I can do all sorts of other things here. So, you know, it might want to be like interests and skills and so on. Now, when I hit submit, that will then just land on the open market. But of course, there's a bit of a problem here, I think, because then you've got random stuff on an open market. So the other thing we do is we create mini markets of purpose, and we have all sorts of them on Hexitime. So here's an example here that that we were just mentioning in the Q&A. So here's a mini market specifically around the sort of Oxfordshire, Berkshire area, around a community of practice to reduce health inequalities. And people come to this market to specifically around that purpose, to share their specific expertise and see who their members are. And I can then see those specific activities and members. So Sylvia in the call took the liberty yesterday of just knocking up a prototype for this special interest group. We've created one here for you. So there's a mini market for your SIG, and every time you tag an activity or a profile with the Nurturing and Weaving Network SIG, it will appear here. And this is all just placeholders really for you, but you can sort of get the flavor. We can add blogs, case studies, whatever you want from your members, share your own content. And then at the bottom here, these activities and these members can be specifically unique to your special interest group. And as we measure what your special interest group does, we can create one of these for you and start to develop that intelligence and that impact of what you're doing. So I'm just going to show you one more thing. On the platform, we have offers and requests. The other thing you can do is just raise a problem or an idea. So we do that by what we call a challenge like this. So here's an example of a real example of a nurse that is bothered by the amount of pharmaceutical waste in healthcare. So she's raised a question saying, like, what can we do about it? She's explained a bit about the problem. And then what it essentially creates is a chat thread where people can drop ideas, and they can also rate each other's ideas. And as those conversations develop, inevitably you'll get to a point where you'll probably need somebody with a skill to do something about it. And it's at that point, of course, that you're on a time bank and you can request that skill, and you can then tag that skill into your purpose and take that forward with a team. And there's also something which we'll cover if we want to later. We can create like private admin spaces where you can like share documents, do surveys, that kind of thing. And Hilda's actually already created one for the SIG. So if you're a bit nervous about just how collaborative time banking is, or you've got something that's maybe commercially sensitive, for example, you can take that privately as well and still host that in the platform. So that's kind of like what a very quick tour of what it looks like. I'll pause for another couple of questions, and then I'd quite like to do an exercise with you just to tap into some of the potential about what this SIG could do and how some of you might be able to start participating with activities. So
could I maybe go back on to some of the questions that were on? So can you say more about the regional or workplace boundaries or locations of the people from the case study you showed? So that's one of the questions in the chat box. So the case study that was there, is there anything about the boundaries or workplace from the case study?
As in, so I'm just trying to find the question. Is it sort of like what the remit was?
Andrew, do you want to come off mic and maybe ask?
Oh no, this is where I work out what a terrible question. I was trying to work out if those people were from around the world or working only in sort of health and social care organizations, or what was their sort of geopolitical, regional employment backgrounds, if you like.
Was that for the one with the computer coders?
Of the computer coders, yeah, because I saw it was called NHSR, so that was partly why I was asking, but not.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. So the remit is UK National Health Service, and it was people that were in an existing community of computer coders that specialize in R programming language. So that, you know, to many people that sounds very niche, but you can see in that network there's enough people that care about that. Now, that's UK NHS R coding, but what's really interesting on Hexitime is where they put that boundary around, and that's like the purpose, right? So they're the beneficiaries of that network. That's where the outputs want to be focused. But as it happens, the Australian Department of Health detected that network on Hexitime, and the Australian Department of Health started to trade their expertise into that network. So although the beneficiaries were R coders in the UK NHS, the Australian Department of Health started to chuck resource into it and skills. And of course, from the NHS point of view, they were like, well, great. It doesn't matter that they're in Australia and they're civil servants. If they want to help and contribute to our purpose, then good for us. And it helps them to make connections in the UK from Australia and so on. So it's kind of like where that end beneficiary is, but where those boundaries are around that really is limited by how you engage with it and how you share it. So if you as a special interest group, if all you do is share your market on the Q community, you know, you're going to get Q members joining. But if you start punching it out on Twitter and LinkedIn, anything can happen. And we don't dictate that. But the point being, if the net result is people are helping your purpose, I would argue it doesn't matter where they're coming from. And good for you for sharing your network wider.
That's helpful. Thanks for asking that, Andy, because I think that fits into a question Rebecca had asked about people being new to QI and maybe having credits. And I think the thing with Hexitime now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Hexitime isn't uniquely only for QI, a QI lens. It's for all the skills that exist. So the solution to medication waste, there may be a lived experience group who are looking at that as well, who've got no formal qualifications in pharmaceuticals, but they do have experience of medication that they don't use, but they don't know how to tell the doctor to reduce their prescription or whatever. So my understanding is with Hexitime, there's a huge marketplace out, and you have actually an opportunity to connect with people that normally you just wouldn't meet, and you can acquire credits quite easily. Would that be correct?
Entirely correct. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you can get involved in weird and wonderful work from everywhere. It doesn't have to be the stuff that's under your nose within your employer as well. So absolutely right. There's also another question in the chat around can you tag multiple networks? Absolutely. So Carol in the conversation, and I see Isabel as well. They're in multiple networks on Hexitime, and you can just, if you've got an offer, let's say I want to share my expertise around facilitating, I could offer that to 15 networks if I want, and you'll appear in everybody's market when you do that, as well as the big global market, or you can narrow it down or what have you. Right, Sharon, last question, and then I'm going to go into the exercise. Go for it.
Oh, I just want to jump in. Hi, Sharon, I'm a health and wellbeing coach. Also involved in networking, creating communities. So basically, anything around quality assurance. So people are sort of maybe claiming skills they haven't got, or you don't know who anyone is. So I guess that's that's part and parcel, isn't it, of empowering communities, and then you have to let go a little bit of, but anything around kind of feedback or anything like that around kind of quality.
Yeah. Trust you. You've asked a very, very big question. so no, that's cool. So broadly speaking, the assurance is very low, and it's based on evidence, basically. So when we audited the first 1,500 members on Hexitime, the first 1,500, we found one person that was using it wrong. So robust, strong assurance processes are really, really real overkill. And actually, in that specific example, it was a lady trying to sell IELTS language courses. And actually, it wasn't malicious. It was just a complete misunderstanding as to what this was about. We had a conversation with her and we removed the activity. So the evidence just isn't there that you need to police networks. But I do understand your point there. So there's a few things that we do to be serious. So my team review activities on a daily basis. So if there's anything dodgy or suspect, we can intervene. So it'll never be up for more than 24 hours. As I say, we've had to do it once in 3 years. And there's something in that about what's bringing people to Hexitime in the first place and purpose. The other thing is there's basic T's and C's when you sign up to say that you're going to be a good member of the community. So there's a sort of a self-reflection check there. Now, clearly that's not going to stop a rogue. So the next thing that happens is when you've got your profile, if you then want to connect with someone or exchange an activity, there is actually a second stage vetting process. And you basically submit an application that comes to my team at Hexitime, and we check a couple of things. The main thing that we check is that you're being transparent. So if you come from an NHS or a professional email address, universities, that kind of thing, we let you through. If it's somebody random like Dave at Hotmail, and there's like no information, there's no photograph, there's no picture, there's no job title, none of that, we won't authorize you until you complete your profile. So that helps communities to develop trust so that you can see who you're looking at and you can engage with them better. Now, of course, you could fake a profile. So we're not, not bulletproof. You could fake a profile. But we try to put those checks and balances in. And then within this, where we're creating mini markets, we're creating local community, weavers, as it were, right? So if a rogue pops up in your SIG, I've got Hilda and the gang with a slightly more focused lens on your market, and I've got lots of you across Hexitime doing that. The other thing that I will just share, I'll just spend a second on. Remember when I showed you that exchange process? There's a 3-step process here. So when that message first lands, the next thing is we're making sure it's relevant and appropriate. And that's where you message each other through the platform. And that's a really important assurance check and balance, because it's at that point where if you need to see a qualification for something quite niche, that's when you're asking for it before you do the exchange. Or what have you, that's when you do the check. And then finally, I'll just say, if you ever get a bit of a bum exchange that underwhelms you, they don't really happen. But if it ever were to happen, you're limiting your losses to 1 hour. Like 1 hour, 1 credit. You haven't employed somebody, you haven't spent a penny, you haven't wasted a morning, you'll have wasted an hour. So broadly, we don't police it at all, but there are professional checks and balances in the background. Yeah, trust you to, you've asked the biggest question for the time. Okay, right, I'm just going to take you to a Miro board. Now, we're going to go onto Miro board, do a little 5-minute exercise. Now, all I'm doing this exercise to do is to facilitate you to think about how you might contribute to the SIG or raise problems and ideas in the SIG to get collaboration sparked. And my end result is I want you at the end of the workshop to think about what we've done and go onto the platform and upload your activity like this. And when you upload it, tag it to the Nurturing and Weaving Network SIG, and it will appear on your marketplace. If you do all those things, we could create something quite exciting, and I'll be able to start working with Hilda over the next couple of weeks to start gluing those together and seeing where it goes and introducing you to other networks. So that's where I want to take you to. I'm going to put a link to the Miro board in the chat here. Inevitably, this won't work for some of you. Don't worry about it. I'll share my screen, and if yours isn't working, get a flavor for what I'm doing, and then at the end of it, just go onto Hexitime and create your activity. So if you click on that link, you should have access rights to the platform. And I will share my screen and show you, and we'll just do a quick 5-minute exercise. So here's a Miro board. It may appear to you when you arrive, it might appear quite zoomed out. If you go to the bottom and you open up this side here, you can put a map on. And if you put a map, you can navigate where you are and you can start to zoom in and out. Now, I will leave this map live for a week. So don't worry about the next 5 minutes if you want to think about this evening or later. Very quickly, if I zoom in, here's the journey. Today's a 5-minute exercise, post activities, get the SIG working, and then we're going to start doing this over the next couple of months. We'll then come back and do another workshop in a few months' time. If you get a moment, there's some social media handles here. By all means, tag us as you chat, and by all means, grab a post-it note here, enter your details and drag it onto the board. And as my team and everybody else does social media, we can tag you into the event today. Everything on here broadly works like PowerPoint. So whatever you do on PowerPoint is pretty typical of this. So if I double click on that post-it note, I can edit. And then once I've edited, I can drag that onto the board. So by all means, grab a post-it note, chuck your details on here and we can follow up with you. But down to the exercise, what I'd like you to do is focus on these big 6 arrows pulling you into the middle here. And I'd like you to look at these 4 columns and the post-it notes on the right-hand side. And what we're doing here is broadly defining you into 4 different columns for 4 different types of activity on Hexitime. So those are, I'd like you to think about what problems you have when you're trying to nurture and weave through networks with your special interest group. And as you raise problems, I'd like you to drop them, grab a post-it note here, like this, drag it across, and then as you zoom in on it, you can increase the size and you can edit it. And essentially, I want you to turn these post-it notes into activities after the workshop. Now, the second column is all about thinking about skills that you have that you're happy with, that you can, I'm just going to delete those, skills that you're happy with, that you can contribute to the network and put those into this. So, I don't know, I might add something like, I'm good with spreadsheets, or I speak Italian, for example. You could put your skill in here and drop it. Equally, as I said, if you need help with something, please add it to this column, because we know that when people ask for help, it behaves like a magnet and people gravitate towards you to support what you're doing. And then finally, if you've just got any clever ideas or project ideas, drop them in here. And of course, what we're doing is trying to break down these 4 walls where you'll find that people with ideas have obvious connections to people that can help them, or people that can offer expertise can link to people that might need them. So I'm going to kick off an example. So I know, for example, that Sylvia in my team speaks Italian. So I'm going to start off with that. And hopefully what you'll see that when you put your head above the parapet and you share expertise, you're going to start seeing that they have relevance in areas that you didn't quite realize. So you'll find that with Miro, I should have said, you can infinitely zoom in and out. So I can like zoom in like this all the way to make something bigger. And I can zoom out all the way. So if you're like Hilda over here and you're maybe struggling with something a bit small, I can zoom in on that and see exactly what she's producing. And you can then start to increase the size of it and play around with it. So I'm just going to be quiet now for 5 minutes and let you all start sharing things. Try and come at it from an asset-based approach. So think about what expertise and talents you have that might be helpful for the special interest group. and I'd start with that. But equally, if something's been troubling you, get that request on there because they're so powerful. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and check the chat. Okay, we're good on the chat. Just aware of time, everybody. I'm going to make myself available for the next 15 minutes, but I'm going to respect your time. If you and we'll just do a quick wrap up so that we can finish at 5:30 for those of you that need to. So hopefully, if I share my screen, what we're trying to do here for these little exercises is support you to think about your assets, what you need, your challenges and ideas. Because if we can then turn these into activities on the Hexitime platform and link them through to your market, what we're going to start be able to do is make connections. So it might be, and I won't zoom in for this case, but it might be that this challenge there might be somebody here with a skill that's directly relevant to this challenge and can help these people out. And when we get these into a big market, you'll start to see how obvious that becomes. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit, see what sort of things people have been saying. Oh, wow. So we've got people with like real expertise around like lean methodology. And of course, you're going to find networks on Hexitime of people talking about lean as well. And we'll be able to start making connections there. People here with very specific requests about the adoption of the toolkit. I think that the SIG is trying to create. You need low-cost ideas for celebrating progress. This is a really nice request. I quite like that. If you were to post that as a request, I think people will come forward with all sorts of things. But it might be that you might want to raise that even as a challenge, like this one here could make a very good sort of chat thread like that to let people weigh in with ideas. So the challenge in this case would be, how do we create simple, low-cost ideas for celebrating progress?